"It's not for you, dummy." She slapped her stepdaughter on the hands and handed a candy to her own daughter. And when her husband found out about it, he reprimanded her nicely. Cindy stood at the entrance to the apartment, nervously tapping her foot. Her husband was fumbling with the keys, smiling at her from time to time as he searched in his bag. She could feel her irritation building up. She tapped her heel impatiently, turned to her own daughter, and adjusted her jacket. Amanda, who was only a stepdaughter to Cindy, stood alone. Out of habit, she took a step back and looked at her stepmother but said nothing. Cindy didn't even glance at Amanda. Archie, her husband, seemed to be completely oblivious to it all. He finally found the right key, inserted it into the lock, and only then opened the door. The man let Cindy enter, followed by their own daughter. Then, Archie entered, holding the door for his daughter. She thanked him, entered, took off her little boots by herself, and went to change. Cindy was helping her little daughter undress, while Amanda was being difficult, and Cindy was trying to calm her down. It all looked like some sort of circus from the sidelines. Amanda was a bit older than Olivia, but completely reliant on others. "Olivia, enough of the tantrum, or you won't get dessert after dinner," Cindy jokingly scolded her daughter with a wagging finger. Olivia laughed and quickly went into the children's room. Amanda went to wash her hands by herself. She changed on her own and also entered the children's room to have some time alone there. She sat on the edge of her bed, swinging her legs. Did she envy Olivia? Yes, but only for having a mother. Amanda had lost her own mother so long ago that she couldn't remember her. But despite not remembering her mother's appearance, she missed her very much. Plus, she had some photos her grandmother had given her. Sometimes Amanda thought it would have been better if her father had given her to be raised by her grandmother rather than bringing her into his new family. She couldn't find common ground with Cindy either, mainly because Amanda was neither a blood nor a stepsister to her. Cindy had joined their family with her own daughter. Little Amanda had heard her father's new wife scold him once again. He stayed silent, as always. Amanda sometimes felt hurt, especially when her dad didn't stand up for her. But over the past few years, she had grown used to it. After becoming a stepdaughter to Cindy, her father spent very little time with her. He often spent time with Olivia, and only because Cindy would throw tantrums at him for not spending time with her daughter. Amanda looked at Olivia, who was sitting and coloring. She didn't blame the little girl for anything because she had nothing to do with it. Olivia paused her coloring, looked at her stepsister, who wasn't related to her by blood. She stuck her tongue out at her, smiled playfully, and went back to coloring. Amanda sat in a way that she could hear the conversation happening in the kitchen. She sat sideways and leaned her head against the wall. "I'm tired of having this conversation every time," Cindy said, placing a cup of coffee in front of her husband. She sat across from him, crossed her arms over her chest, and leaned back so far that the chair creaked unpleasantly. Her husband squinted, and that sound made him uncomfortable, as if cats were scratching at his soul. He looked at his wife and thought he was tired of talking about this. "I want to live only with my daughter, not with your daughter. Your girl just reminds me that you used to have another wife. Do you think I'm a fool? I've asked you so many times to get rid of her. You still don't spend time with her. She's not needed by you. Why should I deal with a girl who's not needed by you and not needed by me?" Cindy said irritably, pushing the coffee. "Cindy, how many times have we discussed this already? She's still my daughter no matter what. If something bothers you, I can't do anything about it. Stop treating the girl poorly just because she's my daughter. In fact, your Olivia is not my biological daughter, but I don't tell you that I want to live only with you and our own daughter." You should change your attitude once in a while," Archie said irritably, pushing the coffee away. He stood up and left the apartment. He didn't want to listen to her anymore. He was tired of clashing with her every time. He went down the stairs and out onto the street. Cindy remained standing by the window, watching her husband, who was standing below, smoking. Anger was consuming her. She wanted to get rid of the girl, but didn't know how anymore. She was tired of tolerating her presence, especially now when she wanted to have another child. Finally, a child of their own. Cindy, who had already made many mistakes in life, now wanted to settle down with this man. And this girl she disliked so much was just an unnecessary obstacle. Cindy glanced at the closed door of the children's room, thinking that no one had heard her. She sat on a chair, leaning back in her seat. The next day, she saw her husband off to work. She escorted him, kissed him goodbye, and then returned to the kitchen. She took out a little dish of candies, called the girls to have breakfast. Today, she would take them to daycare, and then she would attend to her own affairs. She woke up with a terrible mood, which only worsened the situation. She couldn't care less about Amanda, who would once again prove her superiority over her daughter when she picked her up from daycare. As always, Amanda would be ready to go, while Olivia would stand there, whining for her mother to dress her. It was the same every time. When they did crafts or answered questions from the caregivers, Amanda always outshone Olivia, which infuriated Cindy. She tried her best to get Amanda out of the family. Cindy froze, gazing out the window at her husband getting into the car. Soon he would drive away, and the car would leave a dark, snow-free spot behind. She looked at the girls, who had already approached the table. Seeing her daughter made her heart ache, but seeing Amanda again fueled her anger. "This is not for you," Cindy shouted, slapped her stepdaughter on the hands, and handed a candy to her own daughter. Amanda stepped back and went to another room. She wouldn't have breakfast again because her stepmother wouldn't let her have food, not even a glass of water. Amanda felt like crying. She sat in a corner and felt tears welling up in her eyes. She wanted to cry, and she hoped someone, up there in the heavens, would hear her. She really wished her mother would hug her, comfort her, and tell her that everything would be okay. But that was never meant to happen. Despite her young age, she understood that there was no coming back from the other side. They left the house. Cindy walked ahead, holding her daughter's hand. Little Amanda walked behind them, occasionally looking around. Sometimes she heard Cindy angrily shouting her name and constantly rushing her. But soon, the daycare appeared in front of them. Amanda always loved coming here, just because it meant spending time away from Cindy. She hurried towards the caregivers without even glancing at Cindy, who was fuming at her behavior. Cindy turned to her daughter and scolded her for her inappropriate behavior. Cindy left the girls there and returned home. She couldn't imagine what awaited her later. She called her friends and decided to go on an adventure tonight. She messaged her husband, telling him she would be back either very late tonight or tomorrow morning. In other words, he needed to find a way to leave work early and pick up the girls. "Why do you even tolerate her?" a colleague asked, shrugging his shoulders. "She's tying you up in knots, always interfering in your daughter's life and setting her own conditions. She's going out with her friends tonight. Watch out for horns growing on your head by morning." Archie sometimes didn't understand why he had chosen such a peculiar woman. To him, she was indeed peculiar. He had never chosen women who valued only money, material possessions, and the superiority of blood ties. He couldn't explain Cindy's strong dislike for his daughter Amanda any other way. When he thought of Amanda, he also remembered his ex-wife. Memories of her pierced his heart, making it hard for him to breathe. He was tired of these relationships but didn't want to be alone. After all, his daughter needed a mother, and he could never replace her. Maybe Cindy only seemed tough from the outside. Perhaps in her relationship with his daughter when they were alone, she was entirely different. He knew for sure that he would never give up his daughter to foster care. And even if Cindy gave him an ultimatum to choose either her or his biological daughter, he would, of course, choose his daughter. He left work half an hour early, picked up the girls from daycare, and drove them home. They sat at the table, and he fed them lunch. Olivia left, but Amanda stayed with her father. She looked at him, fearing to admit what was happening. "Cindy doesn't feed me breakfast," the girl calmly told her father. "Today, she slapped my hands when I reached for candy. She gave it to her own daughter. I will never be her real daughter. She will never love me. She will never be my mom. Dad, can you take me to Grandma's?" The girl was almost in tears as she spoke. He looked at her, unable to take his eyes off her, finding it hard to believe that Cindy could treat his own daughter this way. But the girl wasn't lying, and it weighed heavily on him. Deciding to take matters into his own hands, he set up cameras throughout the apartment as his job allowed. He wanted to personally see how Cindy treated his own daughter. He knew their relationship was far from ideal, but he had no idea what he would discover on those cameras. At work, when he had a free moment, he decided to check the cameras. He was shocked by how Cindy treated his own daughter. He felt his insides go cold as he watched her simply neglect Amanda, taking away her candies, toys, and giving everything to her own daughter. He even witnessed direct physical mistreatment. He was so shocked by what he saw that he could barely string a few words together. He called Cindy, asking her about the girls. Cindy replied in a sweet voice that they were playing in the living room. However, Archie had just seen on the cameras that his own daughter was locked in the bathroom, while Cindy's daughter played with the dollhouse. Amanda had warned him, but he had ignored her. He felt guilty for not listening to her all this time. Amanda had tried to communicate to him repeatedly about how Cindy treated her. "Oh my God, I'd kill her for that," his colleague exclaimed, addressing Archie. "You should kick such a woman out with dirty rags. This is inhumane treatment. Imagine the trauma the girl will have. Are you just sitting there watching? I would have already rushed in and given her a piece of my mind. We need to teach her a lesson. We need to make sure she remembers it for the rest of her life. We need to do it in a way that she regrets how she treated my daughter and me," Archie said, addressing his friend. They sat down together and began brainstorming a plan to get back at Cindy. At this moment, Archie felt nothing but hatred towards Cindy. In his eyes, she had fallen to the lowest possible level. He wanted to erase her from his life. However, they came up with a plan that not only sought revenge, but also aimed to teach the audacious girl a lesson. Archie decided he would carry out the plan while Cindy was enjoying her night out with friends at the club on the next Friday. He would have enough time to set everything up. He had to make a few calls to finalize his plan. He realized that he couldn't handle it all by himself. He needed someone willing to perform a small act for a small fee. Now that he had assistance from all sides, he was ready to put his plan into action. On another Friday, Cindy decided to let loose and have a blast. She looked absolutely happy when she left the girls with her husband. She had dolled up, dressed brightly, and was ready to enjoy her carefree life. She blew them all a playful kiss and exited the apartment. Archie approached the window and watched as his wife got into an unfamiliar car. He knew all her friends' cars, but this one was not among them. He could only hope that one of her friends had changed her vehicle. But that didn't matter to him right now. When the car disappeared from view, Archie turned to the girls. He made a call, and a young woman entered the apartment. "Olivia, please sit with Emily. I'll be back in about an hour." "I'll bring you a big ice cream," Archie said, addressing Olivia. He took his daughter's hand and led her out of the apartment. He squatted down so that his eyes were level with hers and said, "We're going to Grandma's now. You'll stay with her for a couple of days. Afterward, I'll come back for you, and we'll live together, just the two of us. I've listened to you, and I understand that she's not the right woman to be with you and me. But I want to get back at her for how she treated you. So, you'll have to spend a few days at Grandma's. Okay? Are you really going to come back for me?" Amanda asked, her eyes filled with hope. "Nonsense. Of course, I will. I'll never treat you like that again. You'll see, we'll be just fine together," he assured her. He stepped outside, holding his daughter's hand. He kept turning back, glancing around as if he were afraid of prying eyes. He settled his daughter into her car seat, took the driver's seat, and the car started moving. They drove through the city, and he could see how broken his daughter was. He knew she was afraid that he wouldn't return. He couldn't prove otherwise right now. All he could do was return for her and show her through his actions that he hadn't lied. When they arrived at a new building, he got out of the car, took his daughter's hand, and entered the building. They went up to the right floor, the door opened, and a beautiful elderly woman appeared, instantly breaking into a smile. They exchanged a few brief words, and Archie left, leaving his daughter with her grandmother. On the one hand, she was thrilled to stay with her grandmother, but on the other hand, she was genuinely afraid that her dad might not return. Archie descended the stairs, got back into his car, and drove home. He began to worry that his plan wouldn't work. He really wanted to teach Cindy a lesson and make her understand that mistreating children was unacceptable. He arrived at the house, dismissed the nanny, and was left alone with Olivia. Every time he was alone with this girl, he realized just how far behind she was compared to his daughter. He had always treated her well, never raised his voice or hand to her. Now he just had to wait for his wife to come home. The next morning, Cindy didn't show up at home. Little did Archie know that she was sleeping next to an unknown man. She had picked him up at another bar with hopes that he would pay attention to her, take her and her daughter under his wing, and provide for them. When she finally woke up with a splitting headache, she called a taxi and headed home. She entered the apartment, slammed the door so loudly that she startled her neighbors. "Darling, I'm home," she announced in a voice loud enough to worsen her headache. "Well, I was starting to get worried," the man said in a saccharine tone. "You know, I have a surprise for you." "Sweetie, I don't want any surprises right now. My head is killing me. I just want to take a pill and get some rest," she replied wearily, rolling her eyes. Lately, Archie had become increasingly repulsive to her. He seemed to give in too easily to all those wealthy men she met in clubs, restaurants, and late-night cafes. He stepped out into the hallway, shrugged, and embraced her. She looked around the room and only saw her daughter. She began to suspect that maybe his surprise could actually make her happy, despite her current state. "You know, darling, I love you so much. I decided that since we have such a wonderful relationship, I would take a drastic step. While you were having fun with your friends, I decided to put our daughter in foster care. Now you'll have fewer reasons to be stressed, and you can spend more time with Olivia. Maybe we'll even have our own child. I thought you were right, that she's just a relic from the past, and you and Olivia are my present and future. I made this decision for both of you," he explained. Her headache disappeared instantly. Cindy, like a little girl, jumped in place, clapped her hands, and couldn't contain her excitement. She was overjoyed that she had finally managed to get rid of the wretched girl she couldn't stand. If she had any inkling of the cunning revenge plan her husband had devised, she would have confronted him right then and there. Cindy continued to rejoice, and her mood was fantastic throughout the day. She fluttered around her husband as if she were a child who couldn't stop expressing her happiness. Could it be that we will finally live as a real family? I can't believe it, Cindy exclaimed the day after he delivered the good news to her. No more annoying little girls. No more reminders of the past. It's like a dream. She fell silent because someone rang the doorbell. Cindy jumped up and rushed to the door. She peered through the peephole and saw an unfamiliar woman's face. The woman was dressed in a formal suit, with almost gray hair pulled back into a bun at the nape of her neck. Cindy still didn't understand who was at her door, but decided to open it. Behind the almost gray-haired woman stood two police officers. "Hello, I'm a representative from the social services," the woman said, addressing Cindy. "We've received a request from the children's home that another child is living here with you. According to child welfare laws, if parents abandon one child, social services have the right to take the others." "What? What are you talking about?" Cindy shrieked, attacking those who had come. Quickly, they restrained her, not allowing her to interfere as the elderly woman took her daughter away right before her eyes. They did everything quietly to avoid traumatizing the child's psyche. Olivia, enticed by the promised ice cream, followed the woman, clutching her wrinkled hand tightly. After the social services had left, Cindy returned to the apartment and found only her husband, who seemed quite pleased with what had transpired. "You scoundrel! This is all because of you," she yelled, grabbing a small vase and hurling it at him. The vase hit the wall and shattered into pieces. "This is your fault," she accused him. "You wanted me to give up my daughter to the children's home yourself. Now, do you understand how I felt? Or is it not sinking in?" he asked, looking her straight in the eyes. In those eyes, he saw nothing but hatred. "You monster! I hate you! I could have checked the law first before discussing it with you," she screamed, her voice reaching a shrill pitch. She kicked her feet, grabbed anything she could find, and hurled it at her husband. Her hair stood on end, and she looked like a wild beast. "Yes, there is no such law. You ignorant fool," he said, a smile appearing on his face. Suddenly, he saw her freeze. She stared at him with genuine horror and then rushed barefoot into the hallway. She ascended 4 flights of stairs without touching a single step, and she flew out into the open just in time to land on the very police car her daughter was sitting in, happily babbling away. Cindy snatched her daughter, holding her with both arms, and burst into tears. She returned to the apartment, stepping with her wet feet on the concrete floor. She continued crying, realizing the nightmarish situation she could have ended up in if her daughter had been taken away. It had nothing to do with love. She was most afraid of losing the government support and alimony payments from her ex-husband. In essence, her daughter was her capital, allowing her not to work. "Pack your things, and I want you gone in half an hour," Archie said, addressing Cindy. Now she understood that he had deceived her. She wanted to lunge at him and scratch his eyes out. "I don't want to see you here anymore. Tomorrow or the day after, we will get divorced. Let's do this without any drama because the police officers downstairs are real, unlike the social worker. Next time, check people's documents before allowing them into your home." She didn't say anything more to him. Cindy called a few of her lovers, but they all turned her down. She contacted 2 friends, but they didn't want to take her and the child in either. She tried to apologize to Archie, but he remained unyielding. She packed her belongings, and he called a taxi for her. She gave him her mother's address. Cindy would give up almost anything, except returning to the place where her brain would constantly be fried. Her mother had a very difficult personality, and she wanted to be as far away from her as possible. But at this moment, she simply had no other choice. When the man was alone after the taxi had left, he quickly got dressed and went to his car. He started the car and drove to his mother's place. She was so happy to see him that she immediately threw her arms around him. The little girl had genuinely doubted that her father would return for her, but now that he had, she felt like the happiest child in the world. Archie stayed at his mother's for a few hours. They sat in the kitchen, drinking tea and eating pastries while he told her everything he had done for his wife. "You know, my dear son, all of this sounds very harsh. But after everything you've told me about her, after the way she treated my granddaughter, she deserved it," his mother said, shaking her head with a sigh. "It's good that you're getting a divorce. Don't worry. You just needed to find a kinder, more gentle woman. Everything will be fine for you, dear." Once their conversation was over, he picked up his daughter and headed back to his apartment. She looked like an absolutely happy child. When they arrived at the apartment, she froze out of habit and stopped laughing. Archie felt deeply ashamed for not having listened to his daughter's warnings. But now, everything would be all right between them, he was sure of it. When he officially got the divorce, he couldn't have been happier with how his life turned out. No one was nagging him, starting fights, or throwing tantrums anymore. He drove to work, dropped his daughter off at daycare on the way, and picked her up when he returned home. All his free time was dedicated to her. He saw how she blossomed when he spent so much time with her. His daughter, on the other hand, couldn't be happier that Cindy was no longer around. She was tired of living in fear, and now she could hardly believe her happiness. She spent a lot of time with her father, and they enjoyed walking, playing, and even cooking together. She wanted her father to be happy too. Sometimes she felt guilty that he no longer had a wife. One day, she even admitted this to him. "What nonsense! Stop thinking like that. I'm an adult, and I'm responsible for my decisions. So, there's no need to blame yourself. Our life has only gotten better because of it," he said with a smile, addressing his daughter. She enjoyed living with just her dad, and everything was good for her. She couldn't believe that they now lived alone. The longer they lived together, the more at ease she became. She believed that everything would be fine for them,